Good afternoon. We're going to go ahead and call our January 14, 2016 meeting to order. We will have our invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Father John Jacobs of St. Peter's Anglican Church. Father John. Everyone please stand.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day and for this life. We thank you, Lord, for our freedom. We thank you, Lord, for all of the things that make this country what it is. We thank you, Lord, for all of the people that are here that have come to stand before their city commission to be heard. We pray, Lord, for wisdom, understanding, discernment, and charity to be on all sides, that the best wisdom may prevail, not one party or another, but what is best for our community. We ask you, Lord, to bless this commission, bless this city, and all of its people. In Jesus' most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Roll call, please.
Mayor Hill.
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown. Present. Commissioner Borum.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Norwood.
Here.
All members are present and accounted for.
Thank you. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the minutes from December 10th, 2015?
Move it approved. Second.
And December 17th. There's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. We will now move on to section 1, public recognition presentations. We'll ask at this time that all first responders who are present, will you please come forward? I think we had Chief Shaw in the...
You remind me he's a first responder. They come after us, so they're really not.
Soon everybody has his gun on. The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas Florida's first responders include law enforcement officers, firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs who bravely and selflessly risk their lives in every day to protect Florida families, visitors, and businesses, and who face uncertain situations every day. And whereas Florida first responders bravely and selflessly risk their lives daily to protect their families, visitors, businesses, and whereas Florida first responders are dedicated professionals who make a valuable difference in our community by upholding the principle that no one is beyond the protection or the reach of the law, and their commitment to continued training, skilled enhancement, and interagency coordination make them vital members of every Florida community. And whereas acts of recognition, kindness, and appreciation from citizens for Florida's first responders provide them needed encouragement and support. And whereas Governor Rick Scott has declared June 4th through 8th as Florida First Responder Appreciation Week and has invited Florida cities and communities to take time out of their day to show their first responders and their families how much we value their services to our cities, counties, and state. And whereas the city of Palatka recognizes and wishes to express appreciation for the brave men and women who devote their lives to protecting and serving our community. Now therefore, I, Terrell Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, endorse and join Governor Rick Scott in proclaiming January 4th through 8th, 2016 as Florida First Responder Appreciation Week in Palatka, and encourage all citizens to take time out of their day to say thank you and to show first responders and their families how much we value their services to the cities, counties, and states. And with this word, herefore set my hand to be affixed and call the civil city of Palatka to be affixed on this 14th day of January, the year of our Lord 2016. Terrell Hill Mayor, Mary Lawson Brown, Rufus Borum, Justin Campbell, James Norwood Jr. Commissioners.
City of Palatka Fire Department and Putnam County Rescue to respond to all the citizens, City of Palatka and Putnam County, and we thank you, and we're proud and glad to serve.
On behalf of the Palatka Police Department, all the members of the Palatka Police Department, first responders in the county, we say thank you.
Our next proclamation is for the city of Palatka and its 163rd birthday, January 8th, 2016. The proclamation reads as follows: that Palatka has long been an integral part of the history of the state of Florida, from its early Native American inhabitants to the European settlements of East Florida, and later through the expansion of territorial days and statehood, when the U.S. Army established a military outpost at the strategic location on the St. Johns River as Fort Shannon, or Fort Number 5, during the Seminole Wars. Citizens began to move in and establish homes, businesses, roads, and post office to benefit incoming residents and to assist in the improvement of the territory and state. And whereas the town of Palatka was first chartered and established as a county seat of newly chartered Putnam County by the Florida legislature on January 13, 1849. Many of its founding fathers were Supreme Court justices, a governor, lawyers, statesmen, civic leaders, and entrepreneurs, and were instrumental in the political history of the state. The community prospered until the outbreak of the Civil War, when progress of the settlement was halted. Following the war, Colonel Hubert L. Hart made an area a tourist destination by promoting the steamboat industry for the next 60 years. Palatka became known as the Gem of St. John's because of its charm and beauty, whereas on January 8, 1853, the town was officially rechartered as the city of Palatka by the state legislature for the purposes of providing a local government to its citizens. The charter provided for an elected mayor and city aldermen until January 27, 1924, when a new charter was adopted that provided for the establishment of a more modern form of government with an elected 5-member city commission consisting of one mayor commissioner and four at-large commissioners, which exist to this day. And whereas Palatka suffered a devastating fire on November 7, 1884, with great loss, but the citizens rebuilt the town from the ashes as a more modern masonry town of the 1880s, and it became known as a tourist mecca of the South, being one of the few communities in Florida to have a mass transit system of mule-drawn trolleys. Industries such as Wilson Cypress Company, which shipped lumber all over the world, were established, and whereas the city of Palatka annexed its sister city, Palatka Heights, in 1921. With the city's ability to afford its citizens infrastructure by 1930, the city of Palatka had entered the ranks of modern cities with subdivisions, 35 miles of paved city streets, parks, a golf course, a county jail, 2 hospitals, a high school, and a library. Today, Palatka contains hundreds of miles of paved streets and sidewalks, numerous parks and schools, historic districts, museums and galleries, industries, commerce, modern medical facilities, and municipally owned cemeteries, water and sewer utilities, and an airport. Now therefore, I, Terrell Hill, Mayor of the City of Palatka, together with the members of the Palatka City Commission, do hereby proclaim Friday, January 8th, 2016, as the City of Palatka's 163rd birthday celebration day in the city of Palatka, Florida, and urge all citizens to join the recognition and celebration of this historic occasion. And witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause to be affixed to seal of the city of Palatka on this 8th day of January, year of our Lord 2016. Terrell Hill, Mayor, Mary Lawson Brown, Rufus Borum, Justin Campbell, and James Norwood Jr., Commissioners. Proclamation.
All right.
For those of you who wish to partake, we have a birthday cake for the city, and after tonight's meeting, we will share it with everyone who's here today. So again, happy birthday to the city of Palatka. We'll now move into our public comments section. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on the topics of discussion. First person we have for public comments is Zenny Best. And as you approach, can you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Zenny Best. I live at 200 Hayes Drive, Interlaken, Florida, 32148. I'm here today because I myself have a mental illness. And the lack of services here for us. Not so much the lack, but the parts of services that are strictly in recovery. I worked for the city of New York, and I was right over by a tractor trailer truck while I was working on the highway. I woke up some days, it was some weeks later in the hospital. I was diagnosed with mental illness. You close your eyes, if you're hurt, you break a bone, you know where it hurts. But the most fascinating thing about mental illness is everyone else will know you're sick but you. And that's what we're dealing with today. I'm here to sort of foster a clubhouse model, which saved me. Some gentlemen that have been working in the mental health agencies for years kind of took me under their wing. A psychosocial vocational rehabilitation center it was called. All the services a mental health person needs is there. Social Security, income, medication, therapy. We even started a group called the Future Group, Friends United to Understand Recipient Empowerment. I'm here to bring this to Florida, to bring this to us. It does work. I worked for the city for 15 years before I had the accident. I woke up in the bed not knowing where I was, who I was, and I went on a tangent. I had a $5 million lawsuit. The lawyer took me, robbed me, and had to settle for $628,000. After that, he put my money in, I put my money in his bank, and then they stole the money from there. That's just retrospectively speaking, showing you where I've been, and raising two beautiful little girls. They're taking the brunt of this now. To correct this and to keep this from happening, or the other people with mental illnesses, just like myself, from different other means, we need a place here where we come together and we get to support so that we get the services that are there for us. If you are mentally ill, you can see, you can read, I am Zenny. But a mentally ill person won't see it that way. You can put that in, but they won't see it that way. They need time. We need a place here that sort of steers us in the right direction. One of the number one things about it is you can never wake up and say you don't have any place to go. We are reclusive. We stay to ourselves. And our worst problem with mentally ill people is when we say to ourselves, we are our worst enemy.
Got about 20 seconds to wrap up.
I'm here to start, and I'll be here at every meeting afterwards until we get some kind of resolution of we need a clubhouse model here in Palatka. That will bring us up to date in the police department. It will serve greatly.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
The county is kind of responsible for mental health, and they had Putnam Behavioral, which the state took out of their direct care, but there is a facility, and it's on Palatka Drive. If you go out there, they have people out there that will help you.
I'll speak to you afterwards. I've been there and I've done that. I'll speak to you afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Best. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Item 3. On the consent agenda, item A, 3A is adopt resolution number 2016-12-01, authorizing execution of a bid administration work order 15-48 with Passero and Associates in the amount of $27,800 for CDBG project number 15DBOJ 046402 C04 for Phase 4 riverfront improvements. D, adopt resolution number 2016-1202, approving the purchase of 2 Nimble CS215 storage devices, including installation and support for biology in the amount of $57,962.98, and amending the fiscal year 2015-16 general fund budget. C, appoint members to the Golf Course Advisory Board. C1, annual appointments, Wilson Edwards, President, Jim Roach from PMGA, Joyce Oliver, President, and Jen Alvers for PWGA for 1-year terms expiring January 2017. D, Mayor Hill, Vice Mayor, reappoint Mayor Hill, Vice Mayor Brown, and Commissioner Norwood as City of Palatka representatives to the Putnam County Development Authority for 1 year to expire January 2017. Annual appointment. E, grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels for special events permit number 16-11, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day Festival in March, to include Booker Park on January 18th, 2016, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., and the closure of the specified streets on January 18, 2016, from 6:30 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Shirley Edwards, African American Cultural Arts Council applicant. F, grant permission to allow public consumption of alcohol in open containers along St. John's Avenue between the 200 and 1,000 block for special events permit number 16-10, Palatka Main Street Winter Wine Stroll, January 23rd, 2016, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Harold Cato, agent for applicant. G, grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels and to allow closure of the Park Memorial Drive and 100 block of St. John's Avenue for special events permit number 16-13, Palatka Main Street, third Friday downtown street party to be held on January 15, 2016, February 19, 2016, and April 15, 2016, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Palatka Main Street Incorporated, Harrisburg, Cato's, agent for the applicant. H, grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels and to allow closure of a portion of Ziegler Drive, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. for special events permit 16-08. Cancer Survivorship Celebration to be held on March 12, 2016, from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Dr. Anand Carveller, applicant. I, grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels for special events permit number 16-02. Just for Jesus Ministries, Battle of Bands, March 26, 2016, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. At Riverfront Park, live entertainment, Just for Jesus Ministries, Wayne Mustard, applicant. J, grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. to close the 300 and 400 blocks of St. John's Avenue for duration of event permits number 16-06, Chalk Explosion, April 9th through 2016, April 9th, 2016, from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Art Council of Greater Palatka, applicant. K, approve request items for special events permit 16-01, Hospice Bass Tournament, April 30th, 2016, from 3 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. Northeast Florida Association of Realtors, applicant. Grant permission to exceed allowable noise levels throughout the duration of the event. Grant permission to sell and consume alcoholic beverages throughout the duration of the event. To allow street closure of Memorial Parkway from River Center parking lot to 2nd Street. Are there any items on the consent agenda that need to be removed?
I'm gonna approve item 3.
Second.
Just before we get there, I want to pull items F and G off the consent agenda.
I withdraw my motion.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna approve item 3 with an exception of F and G.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to second. Is there any readiness? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Item 3F, grant permission to allow public consumption of alcohol in open containers along St. John's Avenue between the 200 and the 1,000 blocks for special permits, permit number 16-10, Palatka Main Street. Mr. Harris Burns Cato is the applicant. And the reason I asked to pull these applications, if the members of the commission recall from our last workshop with the CRA, there was some discussion as to whether we were appropriately funding the Main Street projects. And we wanted to address those, we wanted to make sure that we address those issues. There was a recommendation at that time to bring to the commission, recommendation to stay off funding, pending verification that we were properly administering the Main Street funds. And so that's what we're here for. That's my purpose of bringing that forward. I've spoken to Mr. Burns-Cato on this issue, and I think he's actually looked at some advisory opinions as it relates to the matter. And maybe Mr. Burns-Cato, if you can come forward this time.
Well, good evening. Harris Burns Cato, Organization Chair for Palatka Main Street. Thank you, Mayor, for the introduction. So it is true that within the CRA statute, it doesn't specifically mention marketing and promotion as one of its the items that are allowed. However, a 2010 Attorney General memo stated that it is reasonable to see that some marketing and promotion in the downtown area is applicable. However, the funding of those things should not go, there should not be grants allowed to nonprofit agencies to conduct those activities. Now, regarding the Third Friday event, and the Third Friday event, the CRA directly funds the marketing, the special event application payment, the police, garbage, and other ancillary activities that go into the production of the event. It does not pay any money or funds to Palatka Main Street itself. Now, what Palatka Main Street does is they provide volunteers, planning, and implement in coordination with city staff to produce the event. The other thing is that Main Street does have a beer booth, and they profit off of the sales of the beer booth. They apply for an ABT license with the state and are approved. The license costs money. That comes out of Palatka Main Street's funds. Now, there are other vendors at the event. They make money as well, and we've also allowed other nonprofits to go there and fundraise, depending on who wants to participate. The wine stroll is 100% paid for by Palatka Main Street, and is different from Third Friday. Should I go into further elaboration about wine stroll, or should I just talk about Third Friday?
Well, the first item we're on is the wine stroll.
So wine stroll, okay, so sorry, I did veer off, didn't I?
We're fine. It'll save us time on the next item.
Okay, I apologize. All right, so the wine stroll is basically where we have people go out and they pay for tickets, they get a glass, and then they go from each merchant, they go into the merchant's shop, and the merchant will provide hors d'oeuvres and wine. And it's basically a really, really good way of getting people that don't normally come downtown to introduce themselves and acquaint themselves with the downtown area and the downtown merchants. And like I said, all the funding for the wine stroll comes out of Main Street funds.
And you've already contracted with whatever vendors and everyone thus far?
Correct.
And those funds are paid directly from the city to the vendors, they're not through the funds that the city actually ends up paying, what CRA ends up paying, they're paid directly to the vendors.
Wait, wine stroll, the city
Separate.
Yeah.
So everything is done through Main Street and there's nothing from the city?
Correct.
Okay.
With the wine stroll, that's correct.
Okay. So let's stop there on the wine stroll item. Is there any other discussion that we need as far as wine stroll is concerned?
So that he's telling us no money that comes from the city CRA that goes in the wine stroll, you all do it all yourself.
That is correct.
Okay. So with that being said,
Yeah,
Is there any other
but
questions?
I guess the question just is are we willing to have them drink alcohol on the streets?
No, excuse me, I'm sorry, I should have went into that. They do not drink alcohol on the streets.
Inside.
I apologize. There is a sign in each merchant's place saying that you must consume the alcohol inside the store. They do carry the wine glass, so they might look like a booze hound while they're out there, but they're not drinking outside, or at least it's not permissible.
Okay, so the item we have is that, what the item F says is to allow public consumption of alcohol in open containers along St. John's Avenue.
Say that again?
It says to allow open containers and public consumption along St. John's Avenue between the 200 and the 1,000 block.
I think that could be worded. Yeah, that could be reworded, because that's not the nature of the event. The nature of the event is for, I mean, they do technically have an open container, if you will, because they have to carry their wine glass from merchant to merchant, but the intention is not to have that wine glass filled while they're walking through the street.
So it would be sufficient just to allow the open container between the 200 and 1,000 block, but not the public consumption.
Correct.
Hearing that, is there a motion?
So moved.
No. Well, we're gonna make a motion to, I guess, to make that language in there to make it clear that, wouldn't that be appropriate?
The motion would just be to grant excluding public consumption along those blocks.
And it's something they've done for several years, and we haven't had any problems
Right.
with it. It just gets people into the stores. So with the change in that language, I'll make the motion that we allow them to do that.
So there's a motion on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Motion on the floor, second by Commissioner Boardman, any discussion? Seeing questions been called, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item G. Consider permission to exceed allowable noise levels and to allow closure of the Park Memorial Parkway from 100 blocks of St. John's Avenues for special events permit number 16-13. And that is for the Friday downtown block parties from January, February, and April. And that was more of the item of concern that we had, right, during the last event. Is there any discussion on this item?
Well, they have to pay for the police and the garbage pickup, right?
I guess the question is it a part of the CRA plan that they do, that they pay for the police and all those other items that was described? Is it in the plan to do this? Because one of the things that we don't, if it's not in the plan, one of the things that I think that we can't approve this because of the CRA funds that will allow individuals to operate outside the plan.
I think the funds are already obligated for the funds are already obligated for January 15th. I would suggest that we stay or table until our next meeting, the remaining dates, so that we can get verification on all other aspects. And I think that'll put us where we need to be. And that should be, we're coming back on the 28th, and that should be sufficient time to continue to advertise if necessary for the remaining event.
Yeah, we can work on
Is
that.
that,
Move we table item G until, is that time certain?
What about
is that's excluding January 15th.
Okay, all right.
So there's a motion to table item G, except for, and to approve the January 15th allowance.
I guess my question is there a time, that's the motion, but also is there a time certain that we need to come back and actually take care of this item?
On our next meeting, the 28th.
28? Well, let's table.
The event will be, that'll give us enough time to
2 to
advertise.
3 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, let's table it at a time certain on the 28th of January.
okay.
And there's a motion to table item G and approve January 15th of 2016. So there's a second by Commissioner Campbell. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to item 4, a request to amend the contract for purchase and sale between the City of Palatka, Riverfront Development Group LLC, Joseph C. Corky Diamond, Manager, RDG LLC. Mr. Diamond.
Well, good evening. Corky Diamond, 124 St. John's Avenue, Palatka, Florida. I'd like to first begin by wishing the City of Palatka a happy birthday. Secondly, Mr. Rufus Borum just had a birthday yesterday, so I'd like to wish you a happy birthday
Thanks, sir.
and happy New Year to one and all. We at Riverfront Square Development are excited about what's happening down on the riverfront. We've made an agenda request this evening, and we're going to ask the City Commission to table it for 2 weeks until the 28th of February. I'm not sure of the exact procedure, but we're not 100% prepared tonight. We ask that the City Commission give consideration to tabling it for 2 weeks.
Mr. Diamond, I'll be the first to tell you, one of the concerns that we have, and I don't know if the other commissioners have it, but I have a concern. It looks to me, and I'm not the expert on this issue, it looks to me like some of the aesthetic portions that are done can in fact be considered construction as opposed to just demolition based on the permit. And based upon that, we want to just make sure that the permits and the contracts are meeting one another. We know there's been some discussion as it relates to fortification of the building on the existing permits that you have in place. And our biggest concern, one of the biggest concerns I've got is just a letter of credit. And we want to make sure that everything is in place so that there isn't an issue as it relates to the city being in a position where there are any liens on the property, if anything was to take place. So that's the concern that I have out there. And I think that that's probably a general concern that everyone has. And I looked at the spirit of the contract that was negotiated prior to. My understanding is that there was a lengthy discussion prior to that contract actually being mutually agreed upon by all parties.
Mr. Holmes will attest to that.
So that's my concern with this particular project. We applaud you again for taking on the project. And that's just a major issue, I think. I think if the issue of the LOC is in place, I don't think there's any other concern that we have at that point, as long as everything is done according to the Florida Building Code. And maybe Mr. Holmes, is there anything you want to chime in on?
I don't, not that's before the commission right now. I think that Corky's request, Mr. Diamond's request, excuse me, is to amend the contract, if I understand it. You're asking that that be tabled. The amendment that you...
This evening, for 2 weeks, yes.
This evening.
Yeah.
The amendment that you proposed would basically do away with the letter of credit as it was contemplated in the original contract. And I think the concern that's being raised by citizens is that there's a lot of work going on without a letter of credit. And so, I mean, maybe the issue is a little even broader than, maybe the issue is in fact whether or not the letter of credit should be removed. If the letter of credit requirement, if the commission sees fit to remove that, then whether you're doing your work under a demo permit or a building permit, I guess it doesn't really matter if the letter of credit requirement is removed. But if it's not, then I guess we all need to take a real hard look at what the trigger was for the letter of credit being posted.
Right.
And I think that's where we all are at this point is.
Sure.
You know,
So, with regard, I did want to table it, so I've made a request for it, but just speak briefly. You mentioned the buildings. Do you like the way they're looking now? Does anybody object to the way the buildings are looking?
I don't necessarily object to the way the buildings look,
Yeah.
but I do have issue if we are doing work without permits, because if we are,
Yeah.
then
Okay.
we need to address that.
Sure. Okay, so we're talking about it. I was hoping to postpone it. We'll talk briefly, but I'm still going to request that it's postponed. Everything we're doing is under permit. It's been permitted. We have plans, we have inspections. So rest assured that everything that we're doing is nothing but the 4 to 5 buildings that have been neglected for 20 to 30 years, and everything is permitted to date. The issue that I want to table until 2 weeks is the issue of the letter of credit. It was basically drafted, the contract, and we won't get into it this evening, subject to us bringing in mortgage or financing. We don't finance, we're self-funded, we pay cash. So there has not been a lien, there will not be a lien, there will not be a mortgage, there will not be an encumbrance. I can tell you that we spent an awful lot of money, we won't go over numbers tonight, and we're going to spend a lot more money over the course of the next 6 months. We will be complete July 15, 2014, 16, excuse me. And just to remind everybody, we were supposed to close, we closed 4 months ahead of schedule. We met every schedule, down at St. John's River Center. As a matter of fact, we put $50,000 of our own money into the St. John's River Center because of the budget. And that was our contribute because we believe in the revitalization of what's going on downtown. So We're going to ask tonight that we table this for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, we're not only going to want to discuss the potential amendment of a contract, but also we will be making some significant announcements about what's going to be going on downtown, which I think the city, the entire citizens will embrace. So at this point, I'd like to ask for the extension for just 2 weeks, so we can gather our thoughts a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, just before we do that, can I have Mr. Crowe to come to the podium for a second, please?
Yes, sir.
Let's gotta ask this question. Mr. Crowe, what's required to do roofing? Is there a permit required to do roofing?
I'm gonna ask.
Maybe better, sir, to be asked by the building official.
Where's the building official? Okay,
Yes, sir. I'm not qualified.
okay, I'm sorry. If I want to put a roof on my house, is there a permit required?
Yes, sir.
Is there a permit required to do roofing anywhere in the city, everywhere in the city?
Yes.
Okay. So
If it's over 2 squares of roof area,
2 squares,
that's 2
Square
square
feet.
equal 200 square feet.
okay,
You can do a repair
Okay.
without getting a building permit
Okay.
to re-roof.
okay. All right. So, the roofing, because that's one of the concerns in the community. So the roofing work that's been done, it's been done under a demolition permit, so it doesn't have to, they didn't have to come and get a roofing permit?
Not a separate roofing permit. There's an active permit on the job, and we had a roofing contractor sign on to that permit.
Okay. Okay.
It's not a separate, when you have a permit for a project, we don't make you get separate permits for every phase of that project. You provide us with drawings showing the work that you're wanting to do, and then if it requires a specialty contractor like electrical, plumbing, mechanical, roofing, then that contractor comes and signs on to the permit.
And that was done for your request, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So the building official actually requested that the roofing contractor be
Sign on.
signed on to for that
Yes.
particular.
I just want the appearance in the community, I want the community to understand that one of the things that we do want and we do have is a level playing field for everyone. You know, we're not favoring one contractor over another. You know, what's required for all, one is required for all.
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
So we-
I have a question. Do we want Mr. Diamond to go in and sit down and bring our city manager and everybody up to date or talk to them about what's?
I think there's been significant communication
All right.
between Mr. Diamond and all parties involved thus far. I think we can agree that the lines of communication are open, and there has been constant conversation back and forth.
Exceptionally well.
And
So
so,
the office secretary can stop calling my office.
Give me a job.
Well, my question would be, what would be different 2 weeks from now than would be today if we're talking about the letter of credit and the concern for a letter of credit? What's gonna be different?
Yeah, well, a considerable amount of issues with regard to what we're doing relative to the development of the project. Some of the plans have changed. You know, we've been out there, we've been working at this now, let's put it this way. I was turned down by the city commission twice, beginning in 2011. Finally selected in 13 to do it, and during the course of that period of time, we looked at the market and believe that there's a significant need to make a modification to the plans, which also ties into the financing. So we're just not prepared because of recent developments tonight, and we're just asking for 2 weeks to table it, and in 2 weeks from now, we will come back with a full-fledged description of what we're doing, and again, I think it'll be exciting when we do announce this.
okay. We've heard the request from Mr. Diamond.
I'll make the motion that we do that you have your stuff together in 2 weeks and come back to us.
There's a motion on the floor to table for till the January 28th meeting. There's a second by Commissioner Moore. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, questions called. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Diamond. We'll
Thank
see
you.
you in 2 weeks. Moving on to item number 5 of the agenda is a resolution authorizing execution of memorandum of agreement with the Rotary Club of Palatka for construction of a nature-based playground at Riverfront Park.
A resolution authorizing the mayor and city clerk to execute executed and attest the memorandum of understanding between the Rotary Club of Palatka and the City of Palatka for the funding and construction of a nature-based playground at the riverfront park.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. The second, is there any discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 6 of the agenda, a resolution authorizing execution of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Conciliation Agreement, Voluntary Compliance Agreement between the City of Palatka, Palatka Housing Authority, FHEO, case number 0415-430-8, 04-15-0430-6. Mr. Holmes, you want to take this one?
Would you like me to read it?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Resolution of the City of Palatka, Florida, authorizing execution of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Conciliation Agreement, voluntary compliance agreement between the City of Palatka and Palatka Housing Authority, FHEO case number 04-15-0430-8 and 04-15-0430-6.
Confirm something, Mr. Mayor, if you could. The language.
Yeah.
The add-on.
Is it under the fourth whereas?
I'm sorry.
Is it under the fourth whereas? That's all it's looking for, Don?
Apologize for the delay. We've had some exchanges about the wording of the document. And I wanted to make sure that the last conversations we had are incorporated in this version. Mr. Mayor, the language I was referencing was in paragraph 12 under section F. I'm sorry, on page 4 of 7. And I believe that is the language that we had agreed upon. I'm not sure that it was the language that was in the last version of the plan that was submitted, but I believe that the resolution denied plan submitted by PHA. But I think that what's before you tonight is whether or not the commission would approve and affirm the conciliation agreement that was negotiated, and the language that's at paragraph F, section F, paragraph 12 is the language that I believe was negotiated, or that I know was negotiated. So I would be in favor of the commission moving forward with that. And by way of backdrop, I think all the council knows, and the public does too, that this dates back historically to the Housing Authority's submission of a 5-year plan to the commission some months ago that included a request for developing up to 6 residential units that were in the historic district and that were to be used on a rental basis. The commission didn't believe that 1, multifamily was consistent with the historic district, and 2, you had some concerns about the rental nature of the units, meaning they would not be taxed, they would not add assessed value to your tax rolls, and you approved the 5-year plan, but you didn't approve that paragraph 7 that had to do with their future development. We were ultimately sued in federal court by PHA over the failure to approve their 5-year plan. That resulted in us going into what they call a conciliation session. I would refer to it as a mediation session. It's what you might know as a mediation session in our court system. That conciliation session resulted in the agreement that, or terms that I think are incorporated in this resolution that is before you. And specifically the terms that we were referencing were at paragraph 12, where instead of 6 homes, they can develop not more than 2 single-family homes in the South Historic District in compliance with all regulations that exist. But they will use their best faith efforts to place families in those homes who may qualify to purchase the homes within 5 years after placement. And they'll give preference points that establishes how they are to accomplish that. And if after 5 years the families that occupy the homes are not able to purchase, then they would relocate those families and use their best efforts to put other families in who would be in a position to purchase. And if you'll notice the last language there, it states that the parties to this provision express their mutually agreed upon intent that PHA return those homes to the active tax rolls of the city of Palatka. So that is, in essence, from my perspective, the heart of the agreement that was negotiated, and so I would recommend that the resolution in favor of affirming the agreement or consenting to the agreement be approved.
I have a question there. It says that they want the commission to do this fair housing training, and we do fair housing training every time we do CDBG. So and they want us to do it and take the expense of it. How much more fair housing training are they talking about? Because we get trained on a regular basis. I think we almost do CDBG every year. Red Fox comes and we have public hearing and everything for it right here. So is it more they want us to do or what? Yeah, it's on the first page of our, is it, yeah. Full paragraph. We do fair housing.
Sorry, where are you?
Right here first. Go back to the sheet that they give us information on.
If we do fair housing training already, that means that we meet the requirements already, right?
So why should we, you know?
I don't mind it being a part of this document because we already do it.
Yes, sir.
There was,
Mr. Mayor, I know the attorney Ed Burke, who represented the city during the conciliation meeting, drafted a response back to PHA, I believe it was, to referencing the fact that the city commission already has the training that's being required. I don't remember seeing a follow-up response from his email to them, though. Did you see anything, Betsy?
I have sent inquiries to him. He's out of the office until tomorrow. The last communique that we had was that the mediator would accept fair housing training for the planning director. At first they had specified the planning board. It said the planning director, and we further went back and forth with them. We've got fair housing training coming up. That is a public meeting, I believe next month is what Redbox is going to set it for this upcoming application. You sent them documentation of all of the fair housing training that this commission has had for the last 3 years, which is considerable. And they do it 4 times a year anyway, not in this commission meeting, but in the community. So they are going to accept that as long as we can document that the planning director is there. And he also offered up that he thought that it might be a good idea if the housing authority board also took place in the training.
Absolutely.
But that paragraph 14 was never mentioned in the negotiations.
No.
Never mentioned in the negotiations at all.
guess the question would be, you know, from what I'm reading, is the training approved by HUD that we currently conduct? And I know when he conducts it, he says this, you know, this training has to be done because HUD requires it.
We sent him all of the materials that are distributed, we sent him all of the legal advertisements, and they said that they will consider it as being appropriate for the training.
Consider it.
Right, they said that if we send them all the documentation, because that is what the agreement says, is that we have to submit documentation of all of this training to the mediator, and he'll decide, you know, and that's one of the conditions, you can read it.
Is this time sensitive? Do we have it?
6 months.
No, I mean,
Oh, I'm
the
sorry.
passage of the resolution, is it time sensitive? Does it have to be done tonight?
They're anxious to get it back.
My suggestion is that we approve passage of the resolution excluding paragraph 14. H 14. Because it wasn't discussed during any agreement.
Is there anything else in here that
H
wasn't
is here.
discussed?
Well, a lot of this boilerplate language wasn't discussed. We basically negotiated the issue of the housing. We spent the time we spent negotiating the issue of the housing. I think they wanted, there was also a demand by them that we pay their attorney's fees, which we flatly rejected, but there was never even a request for the city staff to undergo any additional fair housing training that I recall.
And it says-
There wasn't.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, can I ask Mr. Nelson a question since he's here?
He has counsel, so
Okay,
maybe.
oh, he's on the council. Okay.
So it would be up to Mr. Nelson if he wants to answer the question without counsel.
In their transmittal letter, did they provide us with a date by which this had to be executed?
It came through Mr. Burke, who sent it and said that they were, in fact, they asked several times, they're anxious to get it back. So we did tell them that we couldn't, you know, that it had to come to a commission meeting, it had to go before the commission for an approval, because the commission had not seen parts of this. And that we told them it would be, that tonight would be the first that they saw it.
I guess, Mr. Nelson, is there time sensitive that we pass this from your end that you're aware of, other than you guys are ready to get started?
No. There's no time as far as we're concerned. This is not our document. This belongs to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Fair Housing and Opportunity section.
Down here?
And I want to also state that this is not our document. We didn't write it. We agreed to sending language in it that was submitted to us by our attorney. And I assumed that it was submitted to you by your attorney. If it didn't, I'm not aware of that. But yeah, in terms of time sensitive for us, no. The commission approved our annual 5-year plan at the last meeting. And in that plan, it authorized us to construct 2 units, no more than 2 units on the Laurel Street properties. So that gives us, you know, the ability to do what we need to do.
All the language, all the discussion.
We can, please make a motion. Table.
If it's not time sensitive, I would feel more comfortable in tabling it. Because all of our discussion had to do with the language, and we went back and forth quite a bit on the language of 12. But 14
It wasn't even the topic of discussion.
wasn't even a topic of discussion. So
Well,
I guess my question simply is, if we were sure they were going to accept what you already do, then it's a no-brainer. But if you're going to have to go do something totally different than what you already do, I don't know whether there's teeth in it. If you look at 18, it says they monitor the consequences of the breach are under K 20 through 24. So I mean,
Mr. Mayor, I would recommend that we table this until we hear back from Mr. Burns and answer the questions. The training that we currently do is going to be acceptable by HUD.
Second.
So we table to a date certain of 28th?
I don't know about date certain, because I don't know if we're gonna hear from him before the 28th or not.
I'm pretty sure we will.
Okay, all right. Time certain, 28th.
Is there a second?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Item number 7 on the agenda, an ordinance extending the 2008 Economic Recovery and Incentive Program, suspending the collection of certain impact fees through December 31st, 2017. First reading.
An ordinance of the City of Palatka, Florida, amending the City of Palatka ordinance number 08-20, the City of Palatka 2008 Economic Recovery and Incentive Program, extending the suspension of collection of the city's parks and recreation facilities impact fees, fire rescue impact fees, road impact fees, and law enforcement impact fees for a period not to exceed 2 years, providing for notice of impact fee rates upon expiration of the suspension period, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. So moved.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. The second.
Question.
We're now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one here for public hearing, we'll close it. Questions been called. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 8 on the agenda, ordinance amending chapter 50, article 3 of the Code of Ordinances to amend various elements of special events ordinance. First reading.
An ordinance of the City of Palatka, Florida, amending Palatka Municipal Code, Chapter 50, Article 3, Special Events, to revise meeting time frames, exempt permit fees for free events open to the public, and reduce notice area for Class A and Class B events, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
Is there a motion? There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. We'll now open the floor for public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing.
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 9 on the agenda. It's a discussion. Mr. Crowe, planning board recommendation to amend municipal code to eliminate zoning board of appeals and to transfer these board duties to the Palatka planning board. Mr. Crowe.
If you want the clerk, Mr. Mayor, to read the ordinance first, or you want me to go ahead?
You go ahead and read it, Mr. Ayers.
An ordinance of the City of Palatka, Florida, eliminating zoning board of appeals and transferring duties of this board to the planning board, providing for severability and providing an effective date. And as the mayor noted, it's not on first reading tonight, it's just up for
It's a discussion item for tonight.
Mr. Mayor, Palatka, Planning Director, this is an item that is proceeded from the planning board, which unanimously recommended approval. The zoning board of appeals is utilized as one of several city appeals boards at this time. It offers the ability to seek variances from several things, including flood zone construction standards, zoning standards, including setbacks, cell tower height, and landscape buffer standards. It also allows for appeal of the zoning administrative decisions, who happens to be me. As far as the need and the justification for this ordinance, there is a disconnect at this point because the planning board interprets the zoning code, but does not handle its appeals. So essentially, it's involved with a large part of the zoning code, but then not involved at all with the appeal of its own responsibility. The zoning board, due to the light load of cases that it has, rarely meets. Over the course of 5 years, I think there was about 9 meetings. Quorums have been difficult to achieve in my experience, and we also believe that the planning board has the capacity to handle kind of this light additional load. Planning board, again, has the experience and the knowledge to handle these additional responsibilities, and we feel it will streamline and make it more efficient the overall planning and zoning process that we have in the city. We have looked at the comprehensive plan, and it does not conflict with any of the provisions of the plan. I have to answer any questions that you have.
I have nothing. If they get turned down for zoning by the planning board, then you want them to go back?
set the variance or set the zoning or what have you, whatever they are appealing, whether it be a building or whatever. I do like having them going back to a different board and another set of eyes looking at it.
We've got 2 speaker cards. Is there any more comments? Ms. Lane?
Marcia Lane, 210 East Forest Park Drive. I've served on this board for a number of years, with some of the commissioners up here. I want to clarify a few things. The board, at least I, did not receive any notice they were planning to shut down this board. Not a letter, not a call, not an email. I was told by planning board members that they were going to be, it was on their agenda item to do away with Board of Zoning Appeals. I told them what I thought about the idea. I could not make that meeting. They went ahead and did it. Just before December the 8th, I got a call from the office of Mr. Crow saying, and left me a message saying that they were asking us to be there for December 8th meeting. I have to be honest, I laughed and said, gee, they forgot to take that board off, we don't exist anymore. So I noticed in Mr. Crow's item information, he says they had a problem getting a quorum. Well, I can explain one reason. At least one of us thought we didn't exist anymore. I do think the board serves a very good purpose. They allow another set of people to hear a problem. They give those people an opportunity to appeal. We have disagreed with Mr. Crow in the past. We particularly about parking, about smaller spaces, to make up projects. We have tried to go by what we realize the people in Palatka are seeking. I noticed he said that the staff doesn't believe that a smaller town like Palatka needs multiple boards. Well, I don't agree with that. I think the more people that take part in the process, the better it is for the city and the more interest we have in what happens. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any comments from the commission?
Yes, I also served on the zoning board of appeals, and you don't get a whole lot of cases, but I am in favor of keeping the board intact. I think it's a separation of duties as well as check and balances with the planning board making all of the ordinances and what have you, and then if there's any variances, it has to go back to the people who actually make those ordinances. So again, separation of duties and checks and balances, I'm in favor of keeping it intact.
Ms. Kitchen.
Elizabeth Kitchens, 1027 South 12th Street. I was at that planning board meeting for another reason and was pretty stunned to hear that they were going to dissolve the Board of Zoning Appeals when I knew that the Board of Zoning Appeals didn't know about it since I happen to know Ms. Lane. I appeared before the planning board and I protested it. I believe that it's very important for the citizens to have another method of appeal other than the planning board. I have, the few times that I've been to the Zoning Board of Appeals, they're a very good board. They study their issues, they ask a lot of questions, and they do give the planning director sometimes a very hard time, but that's what their job is. I think we need the Zoning Board of Appeals. It said it's only met 9 times in the last 5 years, so what's the problem? Why should it be dissolved if it hasn't met that much? As far as getting a quorum, I'm not currently on that board, but if they need another member, I'll be glad to fill out an application to get on it, and I will be at the meetings. So, which might be a deterrent to you all not dissolving the board, but I think that the fact that they only meet so seldom does give them time to be more efficient and to think about things. And as far as the planning board goes, I have been to many, many planning board meetings, and a lot of them last for hours. Mr. Holmes knows that because he's been at the board meetings. So I think that the planning board generally shouldn't take any more on their plate. They have enough already. I've been to the meetings, and they, frankly, in my opinion, they're not able to digest some of the stuff that they have thoroughly. So I think you need to keep this board. It's very important, very, very important to the city of Palatka. And just because we're small doesn't mean that we don't need something. Right. So please do not dissolve the Board of Zoning Appeals. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell.
No, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. I think you pretty much summed it up very well. But I sat on the planning board prior to becoming a commissioner, so I agree with a lot of things that she said, and I agree with the other commissioners. I think from now, my question would be, and it's probably something that you would want to get to, from this discussion, where are we going? Or what do we, what's the follow-up to this particular discussion? Because I think, a decision really can be made.
I mean, from what I've heard, just from doing basic math, it sounds like we don't need much more discussion. Like, it almost sounds unanimously as to where we are. We need to continue to keep things status quo based on everything I've heard here. I haven't heard any opposition from the commission at all. It seems like an excellent opportunity for us to continue to have a number of citizens involved in the process as opposed to having things streamlined to one particular board. And so that's what we need to do. If anyone, by general consent, or
you want a motion?
we don't need action. It's enough. If we don't take action, there is no action. I think the voice of the commission has been heard loud and clear. So with that, we'll move on. We'll move the agenda unless there's something else to be discussed by the commission. We'll move the agenda.
Yeah.
Bess Anderson.
Yes.
Besides Ms. Kitchens, we do need 2 more members to fill that board out.
Then we'll put an advertisement together.
We've got it.
Okay.
Just go ahead and put it on. Somebody else,
And we can-
see if there's anybody else.
By general consent, can we go ahead and direct the clerk to do the advertisement for the board? Yes.
There's actually one coming out in the paper on Saturday. It's a display advertisement that we do twice a year. But we've been advertising these openings for quite, in fact, it's right on the agenda.
It's been on the agenda.
Well, can I make a suggestion? We used to kind of check to see what boards needed them, and if some of us can encourage some people to get on some of these boards, we might need to do that. Because people get a little complacent. They don't really realize that some of them that they can serve. And if we do encourage them to fill out the forms and get them to distribute.
This board still meets about 6 o'clock, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right?
And if there's anyone present who would like to be considered, you can get with Ms. Driggers after this meeting, then that'll be fun.
Is that what I think it is?
And we have one.
Anybody else? That's one way that you have a voice. People sit here and talk about what we do and things, and we get criticized. If you wanna tell us what to do, or suggest to us what we need to do, getting on these boards is the very best way to do it. The second one is vote, to put the people here you want here. So, I just like to say that. If you don't like what we're doing, talk to us and get on these boards so we get it.
That may be the fastest response I've ever had to a request in my life.
I know
it. So, we'll move the agenda to item number 10 for discussion regarding the purchase and sales agreements for 3 residential properties. Mr. Griffith.
Thank you, sir. Jonathan Griffith, project manager. Again, you have 3 properties, 300 South 9th Street, 215 Dodge Street, and 2022 Eagle Street. There was a solicitation done, RFP, a little bit over a year ago. Multiple responses were received on 215 Dodge Street, 300 South 9th Street, and 1 response on 2022 Eagle Street. You ranked those responses and directed the city manager and staff to negotiate purchase and sale agreements. We have been in negotiations with Eco Covering Group and Mr. Harwell for all 3 properties, and we have reached a point where we need some commission direction on what level of security you're willing to accept. During negotiations, we took the approach that we took on the Riverfront Development Group negotiations with a letter of security or some other security, just in case mechanics liens or any other liens were attached to the property and the property reverted back to the city. As you know, these properties, the proposals were to buy them for approximately $1 or less. So Eco Covering Group, which is in negotiations for two of the properties, which is 300 South 9th and 2022 Eagle Street, has confirmed in writing that they're willing to get her a letter of credit for 300 South 9th in the sum of $40,000. They have not confirmed that they're willing to get a letter of credit for 2022 Eagle Street, but they have confirmed that they would like to rehabilitate the property. Yes, sir.
Do we have a representative from ECO here today?
We do not, sir. But just for your information, 2022 Eagle Street is probably in worse condition than is the 300 South 9th Street. Staff did do a complete evaluation of the 300 South 9th Street, and we believe $40,000 is adequate for that top-to-bottom remodel that's needed. Mr. Harwell was not willing to propose a full letter of credit, but he did propose multiple alternatives which were included in your packet. And again, that is one of the primary reasons we are here, and I believe Mr. Harwell will speak to that.
Mr. Harwell, would you come up for us, please? Just take your name and address for the record, please.
Tony Harwell, 322 Madison Street, Black, Florida. Yeah, I was kind of didn't know which way to go, so I talked to Jonathan and Mr. Suggs, and they recommended I put some options or some ideas on the table for security, in which I did. And speaking with Mayor Hill the other day, I came up with an idea that might work better than the ones that you have before you, and that was that since this majority of the work will be done by myself and won't be hired out, that there are some items that will be done, and those items have to be permitted. And I would suggest that, if there are items that have to be permitted, there could possibly be a requirement that the contractor that's doing this work is paid the full prior to permit. That would secure that there would be no lien on the property for that services.
Can you also discuss some of the other options that you brought forward as well?
Well, this is in order of preference. I think this is in your package. And the number one would be just to move forward with the contract as is, which I would prefer most. And number two would be that the city of Black will hold the mortgage note until the agreement has been fulfilled. As I understand it, being the primary lien holder, if the property does go back to the city, that the second liens won't go with the on the property. But I learned later that that's not true. And Mr. Holmes is shaking his head like that's not true.
That's not accurate.
Okay, all right. Number three would be move forward with the contract using contract attached. In addition, the owner would provide monthly clear title reports until agreement has been fulfilled. And number four is phase security. In other words, I would give the city a third of the estimated construction costs on my end to hold during the first phase. And when I completed for that first phase, that amount would go to the second phase for the city to hold until I completed, et cetera, et cetera. And then the fifth one, which you don't have on you, is the one where I spoke about the permitting and being paid in full permit.
A question, don't you have to have a permit to do the work? I mean, you have to pay for a permit to do the work. If they don't give you what's called occupancy at the end, when they do building houses, then you can't get into that building, into that house or whatever you're doing.
But I'm anxious to get started. It's been over a year now. As I, in some, I don't know if you have my package for my submittal for the response for the RFP, but and there is that most of the work will be done by myself. It's going to be recycled materials, 95%, around 95% recycled materials. This will be a true restoration, not just a rehab or a fix-it. It will be a true restoration consistent with the architecture of the time.
You moving in the house yourself?
Yes, I'm moving in, going to live in the house.
The reason this was brought back for you, as Jonathan had indicated, was it really wasn't for us, staff, to decide what security you were comfortable with. The Eco Recovery Group and Mr. Harwell were, in essence, selected to be the people or the entities that the city negotiated with. The contracts that you have in your packet were contracts that we prepared, but when we got to the issue of security, we sort of broke down. Remember, you're selling the properties to both Eco Covering and Mr. Harwell for nominal, $1. They are publicly owned properties. That's why you went out for an RFP. But the condition is that the whole idea was to put these back on the tax rolls, get them rehabbed, put them back on the tax rolls in private ownership, not city ownership. So the contracts contained, as they are styled now, contain a reverter clause that if in 15 months from the date of closing, the improvements haven't been completed and a CO hasn't been issued, they revert back to the city because they haven't been put back on the tax rolls. The issue arose as to, again, the potential for liens being placed on the property so that the reverter clause basically becomes useless. In other words, even if you have a mortgage, the only thing that trumps a mechanic's lien under Florida law is a tax lien, tax deed. A first mortgage doesn't even trump it. And I know it sounds confusing. Mechanic's lien doesn't mean somebody that works on your car. It means somebody that does improvements to your real property. I didn't make up the words. Somebody else did it. It's confusing, but if someone does invest labor or material on your real estate and they use the proper procedures, they have a lien for the value of their work that's superior to even a first mortgage, subject only to taxes. So I'm not saying that anybody's going to allow that to happen, but it's my job our job to give you this information. So if we were to sell 3 pieces of property for $1 and people were to start getting work done on those properties and allow mechanics liens to accrue because the work wasn't paid for, then in 15 months we want to take the property back, but we got to take them back subject to $40,000 worth of liens. You probably aren't going to be happy. And so for that reason, I was looking to find a way of securing, giving you some security that if a mechanic's lien did accrue, you'd have something that you could use to satisfy that lien with. And so we had talked about letter of credit. Bonds are probably difficult to obtain on something like this, but we talked about letters of credit, and then I guess now Eco Recovery is willing to provide a letter of credit. Is that what you said?
On 300 South 9th, yes, sir.
On the one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Mr. Harwell has dealt with us in good faith. He's made a number of different suggestions as to what he thought he was able to do, but at some point, we needed guidance from you as to what you would require. I mean, what you wanted, what you needed. Because if something were to happen, nobody plans on bad things happening, but if something bad were to happen and there's a mechanic lien on one of these pieces of property in 15 months, when it comes time to take it back, you basically can't take it back, or you're going to take it back understanding that you got a $30,000, or not 30, a debt that you didn't have when you sold the property. And that's, so it's our position to advise you of that, and it's your decision to decide how much risk you want to take. So that, you tell us and we'll put it in, whether it's whatever security you're willing to go with, and I can put it in writing.
Matt,
And
I was gonna say, somebody has done, and some of these cities has done this before, us doing this. And is there nobody that we don't have to reinvent the wheel that might come up with how we can do this and make it work?
as we go through that, there's also, there may be another option that's available, and I spoke to Mr. Griffith about this, about some eligibility of different programs that may be there for the property as well.
Yes, this property does reside in the South Historic TIF District, so it is eligible for the newly adopted rehab program, which is a matching grant program for properties just like this. Properties that if you have to put $70,000 into them, when you're done, it's not going to be worth the amount of money you put them into. They're that blighted, and this is one of those types of properties.
But could we hold, if they put in for a grant, hold that grant until the person did it?
Could we hold the grant? I don't
Yeah, I
think
mean, you
understand
know,
your
if they
question.
got a grant to upgrade the property, could that be held in escrow until they finish, or got to the last part of the work, so, you know, it wasn't any liens against it?
The grant for the work.
I mean, the only thing that I would be able to do if we were managing a construction project, and see, we usually own the property, so we get the notice to owners. So we know when suppliers are basically noticing us that they may attach a lien to the property because one of our contractors or subcontractors has supplied material or labor. In this case, we don't have that notification, so I mean, if we were even to hold a grant back until the end, we still have the problems that Mr. Holmes alluded to earlier.
And just for information purposes, let everyone know how much that grant would be worth at maximum, the maximum for the grant allowance.
I haven't read it in 2 to 3 months. It's 50,000, right, Robbie?
Yes, and then a year later, we apply for the TIP, which is an additional potential 20,000.
For exterior improvements.
So in essence, the projected cost could be covered through matching grants.
You say matching, I don't know which grant you're talking about. Does the homeowner have?
The rest we have because it doesn't, the house washing up. The house doesn't qualify for.
It's a dollar for dollar matching. So if he needed $70,000, he could get up to 50 and he put 50 towards it. So he'd be somewhere at a 35 scenario.
Could I,
You gotta fill out a speaker card. Fill out a speaker card
I did fill out a speaker card.
for the different item. They have to fill out one for this item as well.
Would it help if I go through the process that we use for our grants as far as reimbursement?
Yeah, go ahead.
When we issue a grant, when you issue a grant, basically a contract is executed and we do not issue reimbursement until the property owner basically provides documentation of their portion of the expenditure. So if it's a 50-50 matching grant, the contractor issues an invoice for $1,000. We do not cut a check until we have documentation of $500 from the property owner.
Maybe to simplify things on eco covering, Jonathan, then we have a $40,000 offer of a letter of credit.
Yes, sir.
And what do you project the cost of recovery on that property, or did you have any estimate?
When we looked at it a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. So I think it would cover. It's a top to bottom remodel.
So on that one, maybe that's we can start off with a simple one. I mean, they're offering a $40,000 letter of credit on that one property. So maybe that would be one that we could go ahead and make a decision on. That's a pretty substantial offer of security that they're making. I'm just trying to take it one at a time, you know.
So, is there a motion as to eco cover?
It's a discussion item, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
Just give us some
We
direction.
can get direction.
Yeah.
We can get direction.
I give you consensus.
My general consent, the commission is okay with moving forward with that.
We'll do that.
There we go. And as to the Dodge Street property, 215 Dodge?
215 Dodge.
Which is Harwood. That's Harwood.
In my initial proposal, I wasn't wanting help from the city or the TIP funds. I just want to do it all on my own. But if it's a requirement and it helps me out, makes things easier, if that's a possibility to do it that way, I'll.
It's not in the TIP district, is it? Queen Street.
Dodge,
No.
215 Dodge.
Oh,
It's 215 Dodge. It's Dodge.
Yeah.
It's one of
Yeah,
those
it's
old
on-
houses,
it's
is
on-
it? Is it a historic house?
It's in the district,
It is.
so therefore by
So it's looking at two, the one in Dodge and the one on Eagle Street.
No, sir.
No, Eagles, no.
Just Dodge.
Just Dodge.
Okay.
So Dodge is there. Ms. Correa, do you want to add anything?
Roberta Correa, 118 Dodge Street. Because it is public record, and I think we should all have all of the information, Mr. Howell's home on Madison Street is on the foreclosure docket for March. And they are, as far as I know, living on Oak Street in another home. Maybe they're still living on Madison too, I don't know that, but it is scheduled for foreclosure.
And I've also got a signature card, I guess this is Mr. Best.
Would it be possible for me to speak to Mr. Brown about this when we meet afterwards? Because you're talking about properties for $1. This is a prime, this is like a dream come true for people that have illnesses that need the
We're
support.
addressing, just so that we're clear, we want to address the issue that's here. If there's any other
Okay.
discussion you got from Ms. Brown, then you can meet her after the meeting.
Where are these houses? How do
Can you get with staff after the meeting, and they can give you all the information you need, or direct you where you need to go?
That young man right there can tell you where the houses are.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other discussion?
And I want them to know, we're trying to get stuff back on the tax roll. If we can't afford right now to do any of these buildings that won't bring tax revenue.
I understand that.
Is there any other discussion that pertains to these items?
If the funds are available, I would consent to the same arrangement for the Dodge Street property. And that's basically if there is a grant out there to match, a matching grant.
But you have,
And Mr. Griffin, what did you estimate the construction cost to be?
Tony, you were somewhere around $40,000 with your split equity, right?
No, I believe
He's indicated 25,300.
Yeah, and see, I always go on the high side because, I do construction admin for you guys and I don't like to come back for more money. You don't like that. But we were looking anywhere from the $50,000 to $70,000 range, and that, depends on finishes, and if you finish everything out, or if you just white box some of the areas. But it did have an electrical fire. There is some structural repair that needs to occur. There's some asbestos siding on it. We have looked at basically removing that and mitigating that. Other than that, the house has good bones. It's been kind of remodeled, as we say, over the years. So some walls need to be taken out, some spaces need to be expanded, needs to be modernized. Tony's obviously looking at a total restoration, which is also nice. So staff believes it's on the higher side of his number. But again, Tony does this as a hobby and somewhere as a living. So he's willing to put some of his sweat equity into it as well.
do you have anybody who does asbestos abatement
So there's plenty of contractors in our area that
to handle?
I just wanted to just reiterate and say a couple more things that there are, I'm all in favor of getting these houses back on the tax roll. And I just did a quick count of unoccupied properties the other day on the south side, and my number came up to 32 and 22 in the North Historic District. And these are unoccupied properties that just do minimum maintenance, and they don't try to improve their properties or enhance them at all. And what we need to do is get more people to occupy these properties, make a stronger neighborhood, and a safer neighborhood. And that's one of the reasons why, I like this town. I like the South Historic District. I want to stay in this town, and this is a good opportunity for me and my wife. And I hope you see a way to work it out for me.
If someone has a property under an agreement for a deed, do they qualify for a grant?
It wasn't really considered as a hypothetical, and I don't remember anything in the agreement that would exclude them.
As Jonathan indicated, once we convey title to the property, the city does not receive notification of notices that providers of material or labor might have to file as a prerequisite to perfecting a mechanics lien. If the city was still an owner of the property, they would be entitled to those notices. So, and I'm just trying to think of an imaginative way of giving the city some protection for you to consider at least. If instead of a title, a conveyance of title, the city gave an agreement for deed, and they are binding contracts, by the way, which specified that the city would convey title upon his completion of the renovations and the issuance of a CO, certificate of occupancy. Then if there were mechanics liens that developed, we would get notice of them as in order to perfect it, we would have to get notice on the front side instead of the back side of the labor being provided, or the material being provided. And if he could still qualify for a grant with that, so that wouldn't preclude him from seeking a grant should he want to, it would be more protection than no protection.
Well, can we look into that and see if we can do that for them? We want these houses.
We can do it. The only question is about from the perspective of the grant, Jonathan, if you know off the top of your head whether or not that would preclude him from applying.
The only thing that might come into play is any reverter clause, because if you remove one of the owners at some point, and I believe that grant does have a reverter clause, but remember, Mr. Harwell hasn't asked for any funding, so the agreement to deed might resolve all of this if he's willing to do a phased security and we're still getting noticed owners.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not looking to apply for the grants, it would eliminate that issue from my consideration altogether, because he'd get the notice to own, we'd get the notice to owners. I don't have a question about whether, I don't have to worry about whether he could qualify for a grant, and we still hold title, so that if he doesn't get the CO, we don't convey title. But, I mean, I don't know, that's something he'd have to maybe weigh in on too.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the city would hold title until I complete the work?
Till you get CO, right?
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Can we try it? I mean, we're trying to get people into these houses, and if we don't incur any expense, and he gets the house eventually, then we back in business. If it doesn't work, we won't do it with nobody else.
I'm all for it. If we cover it from that respect.
If we cover it and make sure if he doesn't finish the house or whatever, it comes back to the city so somebody else can have the same chance.
Right. We still have title.
Right.
For deed, we still have title.
And we'll know whether if there's no liens, he'll get,
Well,
when he does what he wants
I
to.
can't guarantee you there's no liens. I'm simply guaranteeing you that before anybody got a lien, you'd know that on the front side
Okay.
rather than
The notice to owner.
right.
Well, if I could add to that, Mr. Holmes and Commissioners, I believe it'd be good to go with that concept in addition to a phased security, because even though we get notice, it's just kind of a heads up that maybe, $2,000 worth of material was ordered, but at least at that point, we can check and say, okay, well, yes, we've got that phased security, so if this goes south, we can cover that.
So I guess we can consent, I guess I can consent to the city holding the lien and his recommendation on number 4. Yeah.
Is that by general consent?
Yes, if we try it. If it doesn't work,
Thank you.
we can always, one-on-one.
Thank you, Mr. Harwell.
Thank you.
Moving the agenda to item number 11, golf course management and restaurant RFP. Mr. Griffin?
Oh, I wanted to say something about the housing thing. Can I do that? Okay. I really believe that we need to be doing something for our employees. And if we have these houses and some of them can be, we have by employees, that we give them the opportunity to have a chance to get into a home. Some of these guys work for us for 2 years, and when they leave, and girls, they don't have anywhere to go. And if we're getting these houses and letting people have them for $1, if they can go in and work at or we help them get their financial stuff together, they can go in and rehab a home. I think that our employees ought to have a crack at it. And I'm gonna keep telling y'all that you can do it. So
Well,
thank
you did an RFP on these 3 houses, correct?
I know.
Everybody could apply to.
I understand that, but sometimes we have to take a hand and let our folks, a lot of people that don't have homes and pay rent are scared that they're getting to be dead and things. We just need to have a way of communicating with them, and a lot of people say, well, I owe money now, my credit's bad. There should be a way to do that.
Yes, ma'am, we're gonna move the agenda. Thank you.
Just remember.
Item number 11, thank you.
Recently, at the meeting with USDA staff about potential grant opportunities, they brought up the recent completion of the golf course project, and they inquired as to the status of the city procuring a restaurateur. Told them that basically we had one response last time that did not qualify per the RFP, and that we were looking at revising the RFP and getting it back out on the street. They politely requested that we do that sooner rather than later. Following that meeting, Mr. Reynolds notified me and Mr. Suggs that the management contract for the golf course is up in September of this year, September 30th, 2016. We wanted to bring it to your attention. We didn't want to get in a situation where you issue an RFP for restaurateur, and then 2 to 3 months later, you're having to put one out for the management contract, and that would impact how you were to advertise it and solicit responses. So we need some direction on how you want to advertise one or
Hadn't it always been, the two have always been separate though, hadn't it? I know right currently, as far as the RFP that went out, it was only for the restaurant, it was not for the management of the golf course, the RFP that went out for food.
It was only separated at the request of the current management team, so it's always been packaged.
Right.
Okay,
It was packaged when Mr. Weed took over, when Mr. Weed actually responded, it was all packaged. Just
Right.
With the renovations, that's when it was separated, based on anticipation of that.
But when we put the RFP out, we separated it out, and it was just management of the restaurant only.
And if I could add one other requirement of the USDA is that it has to be a smaller emerging business, which means under 1 million in, I think it's gross or net,
Thank you.
Gross.
and less than 50 employees.
Right. Well, I think if you put the RFP out now with that being said, and knowing that the management contract's up as well, I think we will put the RFP out for the management and as well as the restaurant.
Why can't you style it so that they can apply as either a package or as an individual, for individual response?
For the time period.
No, that's what we're actually seeking here tonight, is the direction to do that very thing. So before we hit the street with the RFP for the restaurant to meet the USDA requirement, we just wanted some direction from the consensus from the council here tonight on that particular item.
Yeah, that was the process of it, give both options.
Some people might want to include the revenue that they think the restaurant is going to produce as part of their operation of the overall golf course. Others might not.
I would consent for it to go out with either or.
By general consent, so it's done.
Thank you.
Item 12, RFQ for consultant lobbyist services for adopted City of Palatka Community Development and Sustainability Goals.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this was an item that was on the last agenda. We have since, staff and I have since got the RFQ prepared. Everything is done. It should hit the street once I get with Ms. Driggers and Mr. Reynolds. Should hit the street tomorrow. And so we'll advertise for the lobbyist services. Once the RFQ has had its time to run and sunsets, we'll bring recommendations back to the City Commission.
What's our close date?
28 days, did you say?
27.
27 days from the day it hits the street, which would be tomorrow. And just for clarification, it will be for an annual contract, which means it'll catch part of this year's and next year's session in Tallahassee.
Anything else? We move on to city manager and administrative reports. Mr. Crowe, Chief Shaw, Chief Lambert, Mr. Griffith.
Distributed a project status update. If you have any specific questions, I can answer them.
Do we have anything? Any questions? Mr. Reynolds.
Sir.
Mr. Driggers.
Arbor Day next week, next Friday.
City manager, Suggs.
Sent out an email today notifying everyone that we have got our contact from state auditor's office. They'll be here sometime in February. We've already made some contact with them, sent them some information. I appreciate Mr. Reynolds doing that yesterday. As you all know, we're headed to Jacksonville tomorrow to meet with Senator Nelson. We've got a couple of positions advertised, our public works manager as well as our HR position. Been working on fire assessment fees again this week, getting ready to go through the deferment request, the hardship request, and returning calls and emails. So that's where we're at.
Mr. Holmes. Commissioner Norwood.
Is there a consensus on what time we're gathering tomorrow?
And where?
The only consensus was who was driving.
We got a consensus on that, so.
Commissioner Boyle.
All right, I'm driving. Y'all want to pack in? I'll be comfortable. Jump in.
We got it right. We just need to figure out when we leave it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
He said 2:30, and if he may be a little later, we'll be there between 2:30 and 3.
1 o'clock.
Asking us to be there at 2:30.
1 o'clock.
After lunch.
1 o'clock. Not one-on-one.
Where you want to be here?
City Hall. Okay, Commissioner Norwood, anything else? That's it. Commissioner Campbell.
I want to re-invite everyone out to Arbor Day. Super excited because the Mosley Drumline and cheerleaders will be a part of this event. This is their first time ever. We're about the only elementary school with an actual drum line that's headed up by students of Putnam County. So they're super excited about that opportunity to join forces with the city.
Anything else? Mr. Brown.
Nothing. I'll talk to you later. Next week. I'll have something. Fool you, didn't I?
Let the record reflect. Commissioner Boyle.
All right, I'd just like to say thanks for all the first responders do. They go day in and day out, putting their lives on the line to help save other people. And I'd like to commend you guys and thank you for a job that's well done. Also, like to say happy anniversary to the city of Palatka once again, and we want to partake in some of that cake. And last but not least, we want to give the city manager a round of applause because he has met his 6-month probation period, so he's on board. So I'd like to thank him for all the good work he's done thus far.
Thank you.
It was close.
That's all I have. That's all I have.
We also met our 1-year anniversary on January 5th as well. Myself, Commissioner Boyle, and also we survived. For those who didn't get an opportunity to make it, we also want to say thank you and also you missed a wonderful ceremony for the installation of our new police chief, Jason Shaw. You missed his 29-minute state of address speech.
It was longer than that.
It was longer than that.
I took 3 minutes off the front. So he had a 3-minute. He called a 30-second timeout at one point. But you missed you missed just an awesome natural display of a young man who's committed to the community and who really gave a charge to the citizens to get more involved in the process and also to his fellow officers. So We thank you for that. We also had a couple birthdays with the commission besides Commissioner Borum. Vice Mayor Brown turned 18 on her birthday. And we just like to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to partake in a lot of the MLK celebration events that are going on this week. Luke Taft will be there doing chalk art along with the African American Cultural Arts Council and many of our community organizations. It's a great time. The churches will be involved. They'll be singing, dancing. It's all types of events and great food for those of you who are about as heavy as me. So with that being said, we are now adjourned.
Hey,